I open the Grilla software up, I sometimes always get this this user message just because my computer is set up with virus software and stuff like that. It just tells me that I'm opening up something and am I sure I want to open it up? So if that happens to you, you just push OK. And then if we plug in the Tromino seismometer, okay. When you first open up the Grilla software, this here should be blank. There should be no information in there, okay? The reason this is shown up is because I had this database open yesterday. So it automatically just opens up whatever workspace I was working on before, okay? So this should all be blank. The first thing that you need to do is to navigate to where you want to save your data, okay? So up the top here is a setup, change database folder and select folder. So this is where you then navigate to wherever you want to save the data on your computer, okay? You can save it via, you know, project, for example, write a project folder on your computer and then just navigate to it, okay? Once you've done, okay, the Grilla software is very buggy, okay, lots of bugs, unfortunately. They do try and improve it, but sometimes this will happen. If this happens, when I push OK, the software will shut down. That's fine, okay, you can open up the software again, it's just a silly little bug, unfortunately. Okay, so once you've navigated to where your where you want to save your folder, you can connect the Tromino unit to the computer and then you can import the data. So either I can go File, Import Tromino Traces, okay, or you can click this button here, which does the same thing. If I click this, this brings up all of the partitions within the Grilla memory bank, okay? So Grilla 01 means partition 1. Grilla 02, partition 2, okay? Same as all the way down here. Grilla 99 is partition 99. So at this point, I look at my field acquisition log sheet, okay? I look at whatever unit I've got connected, okay? I say, okay, this unit I acquired, import it line by line, okay? So import line 1 first, import line 2, import line 3, okay? Do it in sections like that. So I say line 1, I acquired partitions 1, 3, and 5, okay? And you just click the ones that you've acquired that day on the side that you want to download. Now, if you can't remember, or if you want to check, if I push this expand button down here, it will fill in all of the information. So it'll fill in the date, the start time, the end time, how long I acquired for, so the acquisition length, the frequency, and it should, so you can tell what date if you need to check what ones you've acquired. Okay, so there we go. So see, you've got the date, the time, so the start time and end time. So that was 10 o'clock in the morning to 10:20 in the morning. My acquisition length was 20 minutes and then 128 hertz sampling frequency. Okay, so if I select all the ones that I want to import just for that line. So line 1, I acquired partition 1, partition 5, and partition 6, for example. Just select them. Okay. The next one is if we go import. Once you've selected the ones you want, you go import. Now this next screen that comes up, this is asking me what folder do I want to put these traces into. That folder means what line. So what line are you working on? So this is why you need to import it line by line, okay? Because if you select all data on line 1 and all data on line 2, it's going to put all of that data just into this single folder. Does that make sense? So for example, I say this is line, I've already got line 1, line 2, let's say it's line 5, okay? I go, okay. The next screen that comes up is asking me what do I want to call the station, so what the station number is. So you see how it's got Grilla 01 here? Okay, this means I'm importing partition 1 right now. So I look at the field acquisition log sheet, okay? I find out where partition 1 is, where I've written partition 1, and I find out what station number that actually is. So for example, maybe Grilla 01 partition 1, maybe that was station 3. So I just write in station 3, okay? And then I say import this trace. And that should import it. Okay. Next one that comes up is partition 5. So maybe partition 5 was, maybe that was station 8. Okay. And then I import. And the next one, partition 6, maybe that was station 9. Okay. Now, on the field acquisition log sheet, whenever I have imported a station, I like to tick it on the log sheet so that I know which station I have already imported, so I don't get confused. Okay. Now, what this has created, you see how I've got line 5 here? That's my data. So it tells me my line. Then it tells me my station numbers. Then I've got the serial number of the Tromino seismometer. So this is unit 534. Tells me what date this data was acquired. Gives you the start time and the end time. And it gives you the acquisition length. Now on this here where it's got TRC, this means I have data in there, but I haven't processed the data yet. I haven't had a look at it yet. Once I do process it, it'll show up like this, where you've got the 3 document looking windows on top of the wiggle. That means I processed that data. Okay, so this means I haven't processed it yet. This 128 Hertz, that's that sampling frequency. And then the world means that I have GPS data. So you'll see that this one doesn't have a world on it. This means it's got no GPS data. So maybe something went wrong while the unit was acquiring the data and it couldn't find the satellites in time. If the unit doesn't find satellites, it'll still go through and it will still acquire data. So for this particular station here, I need to look back at the field acquisition log sheet and I will write down whatever station location, the coordinate information that you guys have put in there. I can then use that and import it into this program here. Okay. If I want to have a look at the data, if I actually, let's import another set. Okay, so that was 5. Let's say we're going to import line 6 now. Okay, so 13, 14, 15, partition 13, 14, and 15. I want to import them for line 6. Okay, so I write line 6. Okay. And then maybe that's partition 1. So 13, sorry, partition 13 is station 1. Import. Partition 14, maybe that was station 2. Import. And then partition 15, maybe that was station 3. Okay, so when you import data, import each unit separately and import each line separately. So there we go. Now we have a line 6 with all the data there as well. Okay. Now what this creates, if I navigate to, see up here, well, this is where I've saved my folder to. This is where all the data is being saved to. If I navigate to that on my computer, examples for client. Okay, so this Grilla DB folder, this is something that the Grilla software will automatically create. When you navigate it to this location, it automatically creates that folder. Okay, inside this folder, it will create a traces folder. And then inside that, it will create line folders. See all these? So line 5 and line 6, they're the ones that we have imported today. Do not change the name of any folders after Grilla DB. If you alter those names, the Grilla software will not locate the data correctly. Okay, the software has its own file path names that it likes. So if you change it, it doesn't like it and it can't see the data. Okay, so don't alter any names after this folder here. Okay, if I go into line 5, see how it's got 3 folders? These are the 3 stations that we have acquired. So that's the data right there. So when you guys have downloaded data, and if you're sending it to us, for example, then you just take this file, you would copy it and you would put it onto a Dropbox. Okay, and then I can open it up at my end. This is the data here. But all you need to do is just send us these line folders and we can do everything at our end if that's what's happening. Okay, if we want to have a look at the data, so you want to have a look at the HVSR profile. If I double click on one of those, this brings up the raw data. So right now we're looking at 8 seconds. But let's have a look at maybe 4 minutes, see what 4 minutes looks like. There you go. So this is the north-south time series component, so vibration. You've got the east-west, and then you've got the vertical vibration in time, okay? We need now to convert this data into the frequency domain. So if I push this button up here, the HV analysis, okay? This is all the different parameters that I can change to clean the data or to process the data. This is step 1. So normally I leave everything as default. So I don't play with this much at this stage. Later on, while we're cleaning it, I might play with it. But if you just want to have a look at the data, you just push OK. Okay, and leave everything as default. And it brings up 3 different windows. This window down here, this is the frequency component spectrum. So the vertical component is shown in pink, and then the north-south and east-west components are shown in blue and green. Okay, now see how you've got, or this here is the HVSR response. So red profile is the average HVSR response, and then the 2 black ones are the standard deviation. Okay, so down here you see how I have a very big standard deviation. Okay, this is noisy data here. This is the HVSR response, the peak frequency response. This is what I'm chasing. Okay, this window here, if I make this nice and big, this is what I call the time stability plot. So on the x-axis, I have time, so that's from 0 minutes to 20 minutes. Okay, and then I've got your frequency on the y-axis here, or the hertz, so the frequency on the y-axis. This band here that we see, can you see that band? That band here is related to this response here. Okay, now you see how there's a really red band here? This red band is noise, and this band is causing this here. Okay, so I can now clean this data. So I don't want this, but I want to try and enhance this response here. So by using my mouse, I can click these different windows. See how I'm selecting them? So I select the ones that I want to keep, that I want to just to use to process. And then if I click this button up here to process it again, it should remove this data. And see how that's all now gone? Okay. And now here we have a very good, what's called an eyelet. So it is where the vertical component becomes separated from the horizontal components. Okay, so that when we take an average of the horizontal components, we divide it by the vertical, we get this peak here. This peak is what we're looking for. This is the resonant peak frequency. Okay, this is very clean data, very clean, very neat data, very easy to work with, only needed a little bit of cleaning. But sometimes the data is a lot worse than that. Sometimes data can be quite messy and requires quite a lot of cleaning. Now, just to show you here, this is the eyelet, right? But here, can you see how all 3 components show a little bump? Can you see that? This bump here is what I call anthropogenic activity. It's where all 3 components have increased in amplitude at the exact same frequency. This could be caused by maybe a car or maybe a mine site that's making lots of energy. Could be something like that, okay? This isn't too much of a big deal because this is a lot higher frequency compared to this. I'm more interested in this. So that doesn't matter that there's anthropogenic activity because it's not affecting my main response. If this response here was located at this frequency, then it could alter the shape of this response here. Okay, so we just have to keep that in mind when we're processing the data. As long as there is no noise located here, then we are okay. Okay, and that's pretty much it. That's how I would process the data. If I close these windows down. So if I do another one, so station 9, I click the HVS analysis. I leave everything as is and I just push OK. Brings up next window. So this is a very high amplitude. So this is amplitude here. This is frequency. The very high amplitude response. And you can see in this window is a very obvious band. You see that band? That's a very, very obvious band. that relates to this. Now, there is no noise in this data. I don't need to clean this data. This data is beautiful. You know, this is what I want to see. This is fantastic data. So that's just another example for you. Let me show you some examples of good data and bad data, okay? This here is very good data. So this is very clean data. I only had to remove some parts of the time recording to enhance this, but very clean, and I can see the peak frequency right there, okay? This is at a high frequency, so this is at 4.5 hertz. So maybe a shallow interface, maybe 10 meters, 20 meters deep below the ground surface, okay? This one here, again, very clean data, very good data. It's at 1.22 hertz, so a little bit deeper, okay? If I keep going to the next page. Now this response here is very broad, okay? You see how that's 1 hertz, that's 10 hertz. So that's a 10 hertz frequency range compared to, if we look at this one, very sharp response, okay? What this tells me is either we have a lot of wind noise and the wind noise is affecting the data and causing this broad response, or instead of a sharp contrast between, say, cover and bedrock, there is a transitional contrast, so maybe a weathering profile. Okay, so this tells me that the method maybe can't see where that interface is. So the main HVSR peak could be anywhere within this frequency range, which is quite a large frequency range. It's very difficult to interpret. Okay, maybe I might get a client to repeat. Okay, if this response is repeatable, means if they acquire the station again and it looks exactly the same, then I would say that's probably a weathering profile. So there's no sharp contrast. You've got sand and then maybe some soft weathered rock and then maybe hard rock, for example, okay? Whereas this one up here, because this is such a sharp response, I would say you've got very soft sand over hard rock, directly over hard rock, because it's such a sharp response, okay? So maybe repeat that one to just to make sure that it is real data and it's not caused by wind noise. Now this response here, I can't see anything. Okay, there is no band. I can't see any band in here, and there's no peak, no obvious peak, okay? This is an example of acquiring a station on bedrock. Okay, so there needs to be some contrast between soft sediments over hard bedrock. If you acquire data on hard bedrock, I'm not going to see anything. There will be no response. Okay, so that's an example of that. If I keep going down, okay, this is an example of very bad data. Okay, I can't see anything in this data. There is a very high amplitude. So the red means it's a very high amplitude. Blue means very low amplitude. Very high amplitude response in the mid frequencies and the high frequencies. Okay, and I can't see any response in here, right? This is because of wind noise. Okay, the wind, really strong wind has caused all the noise in the data and I can't interpret that. Or potentially the unit wasn't sitting on the ground correctly. That could also cause issues as well. Okay, so that's an example of very bad data. I would ask client to repeat that one to try and get better data. So that's some examples for you. To show you this, I can send this through. This is a presentation that I gave last year. I can send this through to you guys so you can read if you like. It talks about the HVSR method. So you guys can read it and understand more about it if you like. I gave this presentation to geologists and business people, so they didn't have any idea of geophysics. So it's very simply explained so that they can understand it as well. So you talk about what passive seismic is. I'll just go through this quickly just to show you some examples. So this is obviously the passive seismic unit here. This is being acquired in Australia, in Western Australia, out in the middle of nowhere. This here is an example of what we call a Grilla, which is a different type of passive seismic equipment. This is a lot of equipment. Yes, you know, you have a solar panel, you've got battery, you have a digital GPS, a lot of 2 people, 3 people to do the survey, whereas this does with 1 person, you know. So passive seismic using the Tromino seismometer is much better than using something like that, you know, quicker, takes less time. Talks about the method, and I just want to show you guys some good data, okay. This is an example. This is what I wanted to show you. So this is in Western Australia. We have a client who was looking for a paleo channel, so an old river system. And they were looking for this system because they want to get lithium brine and potash brine out of that system. So we acquired passive seismic data all on this lake, okay? And this is the response here. So each of those wiggles that we were looking at, I color them. So all the high amplitude responses are red, low amplitude responses are blue. And this is a cross-section, a 2D cross-section, depth cross-section. So this is depth on the side here, and this is just the coordinates, the length along the bottom. So this red response here, this red band, this is the main acoustic contrast, and this is the top of the bedrock. This up here, this is all soft sands and sediments. This down here is all bedrock, okay? So we give this information to the client. We generated a 2D data grid, and this is the response here. So this blue wiggly line here, this is the paleo channel. So you can't see this from the surface, but we've identified it with the passive seismic. So they were able to drill this, and they found lots of potassium and lots of lithium. So a very happy client. Show you another good example. I'll just go through this quickly. This one. This is an example of a 30-kilometre long survey line, okay, which is the longest survey line that we've acquired so far. This was done in Victoria, in the Murray Basin, which is a very deep sedimentary basin, okay, and this band here is the bedrock, okay. So this is from, let's say 0, so this is a 350-metre depth section. That's how deep that is, 350 metres. So here we can see where the bedrock gets shallow, we can see where the bedrock is deeper, and then sometimes we can identify these faults, okay. There's a large vertical offset between, for example, this station here and this station, large vertical offset, which probably means that there's a fault here. So we can do some interpretation on that as well. So this is very clean data, very good data. So I'll send this to you and a couple other presentations that we've given over the last 5-6 years, so that you guys can read up on the methodology, the method, and see some examples of data that we've acquired over the years. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of all I had to show. So do you guys have any questions at the moment?
Faris, you're muted at the moment. Unmute yourself. Do you have any questions, Kyle?
Not yet. Not yet, Gerard.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe if we have some question about acquisition and processing data, maybe we send email to Mrs. Sarah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, no problem. Absolutely. No problem. I will help.
Okay, Mrs. Sarah, I have question. What is this?
That is the external GPS.
GPS. So
external one. So you don't need to use.
You don't need this one?
No. So on the unit itself.
Yeah.
Sorry, the unit itself has an internal GPS. So there's already one inbuilt into the unit. Yeah. Okay. So this already has a GPS inside the unit. Yeah. Then we have an external GPS for they mainly use it for when they're doing surveying in buildings, because the unit can't see satellites in the buildings. So they take the GPS, put it outside the window so that they can see the satellites there. Yes. So you shouldn't have to use it. Yeah. Sometimes if there is very thick vegetation, so lots of trees, lots of bushes, sometimes the unit might struggle to see the satellites. Okay, so just keep in mind that if that happens, maybe use the external GPS and maybe try and put it up high, like in a branch, so it's a bit closer. Yeah. Yeah, something, only if it's very thick. You know, where you are now, you're fine, you don't need to. But if it's very, very thick, you might have to do that. The external GPS is a little bit stronger than the internal GPS. Okay, but you should be fine with the internal GPS.
Ada lagi pertanyaan? Oh, baterai. Cuma susah dibuka.
Itu kayaknya gara-gara baterai tadi masuknya gampang banget.
Oh ya.
Okay, so no other questions for Shana at the moment?
Dia harus sedia kali membantu.
Shana, I might get you to make me the host again. I have to make you the host so you can share your screen. Yeah.
Yeah, do you know how to do that?
So if you click on your picture, on my picture, sorry, or my lack of picture, you can basically